Welcome, everybody. It's loud. Budget and Finance, December the 5th, 2022. We'll count it down. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We've got a relatively small agenda tonight compared to the last few weeks. About half are on consent. One is going to have to be pulled because we have an abstention. Let me get to that real quick. It's number 5. 2022 1886 was on the consent calendar. It's going to have to be pulled from consent. All right, I'm going to start reading these. Does anything else need to be pulled that anybody saw? I don't see any hands. Going once, going twice. Sold. Yeah, 1886 is being pulled. There was an abstention on that, so we're going to pull it. So, all right, I'm going to go ahead and read through the consent calendar, then we'll get started after that. RS 2022-1884, Roten in Syracuse approves the Edward Byrne Memorial Justice Assistance Grant from the Office of Justice Programs to the Metropolitan Nashville Police Department to support a broad range of activities to prevent and control crime based on state and local needs and conditions. 2022-1885, Roten in Syracuse approves an intergovernmental agreement between the Metropolitan Nashville Police Department and the University of Mississippi for extra duty police services. 2022-1887, Hancock and Roten authorizes the Metropolitan Development and Housing Agency to enter into a pilot agreement and accept payments in lieu of ad valorem taxes with respect to a multifamily housing project located at 616 North DuPont Avenue, known as Birchstone Village. 2022-1888, Roten, Syracuse, and Saguaro appropriates $200,000 from the Office of Family Safety to various nonprofit organizations selected to receive community partnership fund grants. 2022-1889, Roten, Syracuse, Evans, and Saguaro approves a grant contract between the Metropolitan Board of Health and the Mental Health Cooperative to provide outreach, assessment, and linkage to care for individuals identified by the Nashville Fire Department EMS as part of the high-impact area opioid overdose response program. 2022-1890, Roten, Syracuse approves an application for an emergency management performance grant from the Tennessee Emergency Management Agency to the Metropolitan Offices of Emergency Management to subsidize the emergency management program. 2022-1891, Roten, Syracuse approves an application for the DWR ARP non-collaborative grant state water infrastructure program grant from the Tennessee Department of Environment and Conservation to the Metropolitan Nashville Water and Sewerage Service Department to modernize and upgrade the Dry Creek Water Reclamation Facility. I believe that takes care of everything. Can I get a motion? Motion properly seconded. That was consent calendar. All in favor? Any opposed? I apologize, Council Member Hurt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I need to be abstained on 1889.
All right, let's do it one more time. So all in favor? Any opposed? All right. All right, starting off on item number one on the resolution calendar, 2022-1883, Roten, Syracuse, Pulley, and others authorizes the Metropolitan Government to enter into an agreement with private entities to acquire, share, and otherwise use surveillance technology and install surveillance technology onto or within the public right-of-way. Moved, properly seconded. We have an amendment. I'm the sponsor of the amendment, but it came from the administration. They needed to make some technical changes on the amendment, so I will, if I could get a motion on that. Motion properly seconded, and I'll let someone from the administration explain what this amendment is doing. If, you're on.
Thank you, Chair. The amendment does two things. When the RFQ is printed off from procurement's webpage, it uses Oracle software that for some reason carries over some computer language inadvertently, just code language interspersed throughout. So procurement, I think, painstakingly went through it. My special thanks to Michelle Lane and her staff going through it and culled it. So it's just it's a clean copy, if you will. It also specifies the actual department engaged in this, the MNPD, and that's it.
All right, so that's what the amendment does. Are there any other questions on the amendment? Councilmember Mendez.
Thanks, Chair. I've got a question about the bill, something about the amendment and something else about the bill. You want me to just do them both?
Just go ahead and do the amendment, and then you can ask for, yeah, that's fine, do both.
All right, so and I don't know whether this is for legal or for Council Director Darby. I guess I'm a little confused about us approving doing this at the RFP stage rather than we know that there's a contract. My understanding that is that the ordinance that we're going under has a small list of things that would trigger a hearing, and one of them is entering a contract. And we're not really at this stage. So I'm trying to understand how to mesh together the language in the ordinance that says we have a hearing in order to approve entering a contract when we don't know who the counterparty would be at this point.
Council, you recognize.
Yes, there's a list of actions that have to have a public hearing and approval by the council before they're undertaken. One of which is installing surveillance technology onto the public rights of way, and also entering into an agreement with a private entity to acquire, among other things, surveillance technology. And technically, we are approving this before an agreement is entered and having a public hearing to discuss acquiring LPR technology.
So we're approving a not yet written contract that we don't have in front of us?
Yes.
Do you believe that's consistent with the ordinance?
The ordinance is pretty broad in the way it's written. It says entering into an agreement with a private entity. I don't know if the intent of the ordinance was to mean that we would approve an agreement prior to having the document in front of us.
All right. And then, Chair, I'm sorry, I was talking over you. Should I cover the other one now?
Well, since we were just discussing it, we haven't done the amendment yet. Hold on just 1 second. Councilmember Johnston on the amendment.
Yes. Can we get an opinion from Ms. Amos, who is the legal advisor for procurement, on her opinion of where we're at with this public hearing and resolution and what's actually required and what's not?
Councilmember Johnson, was that on the bill itself or on the resolution or on the amendment?
On the amendment.
On the amendment, okay.
Well, maybe it is on the entire thing, but I guess it's sort of all, I don't know, it's all related.
We're having a lot of discussion. So we have an amendment that really has to get put on before we could do anything on this. So could we get a Councilmember Mendez, I'm sorry.
Just the reason why I brought it up now is, as drafted, there is no document attached to the resolution at all, no exhibit whatsoever. So this would add an exhibit to the resolution for the very first time. And so I'm trying to understand what the amendment does in terms of adding an RFP where there was no exhibit previously.
Administration, did y'all? You recognize.
So, Councilmember Johnston, the code requires us to have a public hearing prior to installing surveillance technology, which is part of what will happen during this RFP process. And it also requires that prior to we enter into an agreement with a private entity, that there be a public hearing. So our reading of the code is that prior to entering into the agreement, there be a public hearing, which is what the code says, and that's what we're doing right now.
Okay. And are we actually entering into a formal agreement, or is this an intent to enter into an agreement, which is what the pilot is, correct? I mean, we do a pilot to say, is this working? Is this not working? And then at the end of it, we have another resolution and to say, yes, this is what we want to do and we want to enter into a formal agreement. So that's my understanding, is that the resolution is to say, yes, we want to do this pilot, which is part of the RFP process. Is that?
So the pilot, and please, someone from procurement correct me if I'm wrong, my understanding is that the pilot is part of the RFP process. There's a 6-month pilot that is part of the evaluation process during the RFP. There may be several vendors that participate in the pilot, but that's my understanding. I see Michelle in the back ready to.
Ms. Lane, you want to answer that?
Yes, so you are correct. And I've got Ms. Terry Ray here with me, who is the Senior Procurement Specialist working the solicitation. She can keep me honest. But I believe that, you know, when we issue this, we want to make sure that we are soliciting the best hard and software provider and implementer, and that pilot process, in addition to satisfying the requirements set forth in the legislation, allows us from a procurement standpoint to ensure that we are trying, if you will, through a field trial process, the best equipment. So it is baked into that process.
Okay. So this resolution has to pass in order to even do the pilot program, which then at the end of the pilot is when we would actually enter into the agreement, which is what that resolution that comes at the end of the 6-month period would be for. So this is all in correct timing, is what I'm understanding.
Councilmember Mendez.
Maybe Councilmember Johnson and I are saying the same things, but I'm hearing it differently. I understand that that there absolutely positively would be a contract for the pilot period. Legal, am I right about that? Or procurement? Because the way I read the RFP, it says it's a contract for 6 months with the opportunity to become permanent if certain legislation passes the council. That's what I read in the RFP.
Ms. Lane.
Yeah, that was the initial, based on the initial procurement planning. Upon additional advice from legal, we're kind of amending that RFP to move in a different direction.
Councilmember Mendez.
I mean, I know I read it quickly because it was in the amendments package, but the thing where this amendment would attach says it's a contract for 6 months and with the opportunity for it to become permanent if certain legislation passes the council. So I guess if this isn't the final version of the RFP, I'm not sure whether this is ready for prime time.
You're recognized.
The RFP has 4 stages, so we're only at the end of stage 1 right now. The pilot is maybe in stage 3 or 4, but we're just only at the end of stage 1. And so part of the pilot will be installing some of this technology into the right-of-way, et cetera, which is why this public hearing is necessary.
Councilmember Mendez.
So Director Lane just told us there will be a contract in advance of the 6-month pilot. That's what she just said.
No.
So we're going to acquire technology from an unknown company for a 6-month pilot period. That's
Councilmember Lane. Sorry, Ms. Lane.
So again, the initial intention with the RFQ, Councilmember Mendez, was to initiate a trial. We were advised by legal that we could not even include that as part of the RFQ. In order to do a field trial, we had to have satisfaction of the legislation requiring a public hearing because there had to be installation. So based upon that advice, we amended the solicitation. We then, at the request of the police department, modified the 6-month pilot to also incorporate the field trial. So the 6-month pilot and the field trial would happen concurrently. And we were further advised that it would be, the equipment would continue to be owned by the offerers, and we would be evaluating that equipment as well as its functionality during that pilot period, in addition to ensuring, the capturing the data that would be needed that I'm, not suited to speak to, required by the LPR legislation.
Thank you.
Anything else, Councilmember Mendez? All right, we are on the amendment. On the amendment. Councilmember Benedict.
Thank you, Chair. So for the procurement legal, I have a question. She mentioned that we are currently on phase 1 and that this equipment would be in phase 3 or 4. Is there a reason why we wouldn't wait until phase 3 or 4 to move forward at this step? Is there a reason why a delay would not be, or why would a delay be problematic in between phases 2 and 3 or 3 and 4 or whatever phases there are before that equipment is in place?
Council, you recognize.
I'll defer to purchasing in the police department on the timeline there. I'm not sure how long the other phases last, but you only do the public hearings once a month.
Ms. Lane, you recognize.
Yeah, I think if I understand, Councilmember Benedict, your question, it is, do we have to do the public hearing right now, or can we do the public hearing at the phase that we're trying the equipment?
Actually, I understand the public hearing to be once we have a contract. I mean, we're talking, a field trial is not the same as a pilot, is what I'm hearing right now for the first time. Is that correct?
Ms. Lane.
I don't want to speak to the pilot just because I don't believe I'm the expert on that piece of legislation requiring the pilot and what it was designed to accomplish. I can tell you that when we solicit for equipment, hardware and software, body cams are an example, okay, where we do a field trial, it is part of the process that enables us to determine who the awardee should be, the best selection. The request from the police department as recently as last week was, let's modify our procurement design and include that field trial as part of this pilot. And so what would happen is, in addition to determining the quality of the hardware and the software, as well as the qualifications of the implementer, it would also serve to meet the requirements set forth in the legislation requiring the pilot, which I understand to be very detailed. I'm not the expert on what is required for the LPR program, but that period of time would certainly satisfy a field trial process to determine the best equipment, hardware, software, as well as the best implementer. So they're both running concurrently now.
Thank you for that. And so I guess then going back to the question in regards to timing, is there a reason why a timeline couldn't be baked into the RFQ for in between, so that a public hearing, should one need to take place, such that a public hearing could occur prior to the field trial implementation?
Again, I defer to council office on that. I defer to legal. We know that in order to, based on the advice we've been provided, as it impacts the procurement process, we know that in order to install equipment into the right-of-way, even for the purpose of conducting a field trial, let's just say we held the field trial before the pilot actually executed. The interpretation of the law that we've gotten is that we'd have to have the public hearing occur even then. So in order for us to move forward with the subsequent phases of the solicitation requiring the installation of equipment, a public hearing would have to occur, is the advice that we've been given. I'm not certain what happens beyond that as it relates to the actual LPR program itself. I know it has to come back to council. I would defer to others about that process, but that's the advice that we've been given by legal. And so in order for us to move this forward, consistent with this body's intention, we've got to have this public hearing process that allows people to hear. There is not an actual contract that they're going to be hearing, but it would authorize, once we complete that process, if it were green-lighted to go forward, we could enter into a contract, as well as it allows us to install.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lane.
One more question for our attorney, if I may.
Sure, Councilmember Bendick.
Director Darby, or sorry, Chair. So I just want to clarify. So I want to go back to the question of field trial is a term that we're using right now. We also are using the term pilot. From a legal perspective, are those equivalent, or are those two separate things relative to how the language reads in the bill?
Director Darby.
The phrase field trial and pilot are not utilized in the resolution. The pilot, I believe that we're talking about, is the 6-month pilot period that the code requires. Whether the field trial is included as, I don't really know what the field trial is, but whether that's included as part of the 6-month pilot or in advance of the 6-month pilot would be up to the procurement of getting the system in place.
Anything further? We are on the amendment. I don't see any other hands. All in favor? Any opposed? 9 in favor, 2 against. On the amendment. We are now on the bill. Do we have any on the resolution. Do we have any questions on the resolution? Council Member Allen, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate the fact that there's at least a public statement being made before we begin this process, because I think as we went through the hard work that brought us to having a procedure and a policy in place, it became very clear that it is important to do everything we can to earn the public trust. And so I appreciate the fact that we are making a public statement before things get really far down the line, because I think people would be resentful if we had already gone out and found somebody and then surprised everyone that we're doing that. So I understand there's some ambiguity about exactly when we need to start this process, but for me, that seems helpful. One thing that I would like to get some information, possibly from the MNPD, on, if Commander Gilder is here, is the ordinance very clearly states that we will have a policy in place, and there will be a website that states what that policy is and who the custodian is. And if I could get some information on how far down the line we are on that process, because again, in light of just transparency and accountability, I think knowing that that's going to be very early in the process, if not already, is important. So is there anyone that can answer that question?
Looks
Thank
like
you,
Commander
Gilbert.
stepped up, so you're recognized.
Thank you. Chris Gilder, Metro Police. We have been developing the draft policy. There are some things that we need to tweak on it, but the plan is to have it in place on our website, publicly available, before this pilot ever goes live. So it will absolutely be publicly available.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Mendez.
Thanks, Chair. This question is also for, I think, Council Director Darby, maybe legal. In the Metro Code of Laws at 13.8.080D, it says that the council has to make a determination that the benefits to the citizens and residents of Nashville and Davidson County outweigh the cost, and the proposal will safeguard civil liberties and civil rights, and that in the judgment of the Metro Council, no alternative with a lesser economic cost or impact upon civil rights or civil liberties would be effective. And I guess my question is, where's that determination in the legislation?
Director Darby.
Currently, there is a reference to that section to make that determination in the recitals.
So I think, my understanding is that recitals aren't part of the legislation unless they're expressly incorporated into the legislation, and there's nothing after the now therefore that makes the determination or incorporates the recitals. So my reading of this is that it doesn't make a determination. It recites the same law that I recited, but doesn't make a determination. Is that your read of it?
Director Darby.
Yeah, the way the legislation is prepared, there is reference to the determination that it needs to be made, but there is no section in the what I call the action portion of the legislation that actually makes a determination or makes a finding.
Chair, because there's nothing after the now therefore in section 1 or 2 that incorporates the determination that's required by 13.08.080D, as required, I would move for a one meeting deferral.
That's a proper motion. We have a motion for a one meeting deferral. On the deferral, we got four hands here. I'm trying to go with first ones first. Councilmember Johnston on the deferral.
I'm against the deferral. I think it's important to note that the timing of this, this council started this process, and I think most of the people that sit in this council would like to finish it one way or the other. And it's been made very clear to me that with the timing of procurement, with the 6-month pilot, that if we defer this at all, the resolution that comes back to us at the end of the 6-month pilot with demonstrative data, whether it's effective or not, will not come before this council. It will be the next council. And so if that's what you want to do, then that's what happens when you defer it. Personally, I think that most people on this council would like to have it come back to this particular council and not defer it.
Councilmember Gamble.
Thank you, Chair. I guess I'm needing a little bit more clarification on the motion to defer and why it would be necessary to defer to add, I guess, a clause that was suggested in the chart. I guess if I could get a little bit more clarification, and maybe Director Darby can explain what exact is being suggested needs to be added to the legislation that's in the recital, but not in the additional information after therefore.
Director Darby.
I can try. I don't know what the reason for the deferral is necessarily. I think the council member would be able to explain that better than me. But Section D requires that a determination be made, making 3 findings, essentially. And that language is included in the recital as a reference to the code. It's not making a finding in the recitals. It's only making a reference to the code stating that a determination shall be made. So a determination at some point will need to be made that, basically a cost benefit, the benefits outweigh the cost, that sort of thing, with regard to the approval.
And will that determination need to be made regardless if the language is in the recital and after the recital? I guess I'm trying to figure out if it's in the recital, it's in the legislation, is it not valid already?
The way the language is included in the legislation currently is a reference to the code section. It says, and I don't have it in front of me.
So it doesn't spell it out. It just says the code. So you have to go back to the code.
It says the code requires that you make a determination. It doesn't say we are making a determination.
But the code determines that we have to make one, and that's in the legislation. Okay, for that reason, it seems like we're splitting hairs. I don't understand why we need to defer to add language that's already in the bill. It may not be specific, but the code number is in the bill. So for that reason, I would like to speak against the deferral.
Councilmember Allen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a clarification. I mean, if something's in the code, aren't people required to obey the code, whether we spell it out or not? I mean, I think I brought this up on something else where I wanted to specifically add something in the code, but if it's already in the code that you have to do this, they have to do it whether we say it again or not, don't they?
Yeah, for things that are in the code, for instance, the creation of a policy, the department is required to create a policy for how the LPR data is going to be used. we don't need to put that into every piece of legislation that comes out. They have to do it because it's already required of them. This is a code section that requires something additional of this body. It requires this body when approving, the installation or any of these long list of items that you have to approve. It requires that you make this determination. And currently, the legislation states that this code section exists, but it doesn't actually make the determination pursuant to the code section.
But if the code says when this is being done, you have to do this, doesn't that already clearly say it has to be done? I mean, it seems like we've spelled it out already, have we not?
Well, let me read it. It says the approval by the council for any action set forth in subsection C, which is subsection C includes the list of actions that you have to approve, shall be granted only upon a determination. And it goes on to make 3 points, that the benefits to the citizens outweigh the cost, that the proposal will safeguard civil liberties and civil rights, and that in the judgment of the council, no alternative or lesser economic cost or impact upon civil rights or civil liberties will be as effective. So those findings must be made by the council. And currently, the way the legislation is proposed, that statement is made in the recital as a reference to the code section.
So one final question. And so 6 months from now, if they decided not to do that, that would have been a bad decision. But if they care about this and they want us to propose, then they're motivated to do that because it says in the code that they have to if they want us to approve it. Is that another way to look at this?
I don't think that this is a mandate on the department. It's a mandate on the council that the council put on themselves.
Right. And so they're aware of that. If they choose not to fulfill that, then they will know that we will not approve it. So it seems like instructions are there, whether it's moved from the recitals down into the action part or not. So I kind of stand with Councilmember Gamble on going ahead and moving forward.
Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you. So this recital says a determination has to be made, but it's not saying that the determination is being made. Isn't that what the pilot is for, is to make the determination? And I would defer, honestly, to maybe Mr. Jameson or Ms. Amos, what their thoughts are.
You're recognized.
Thank you, Councilmember. Thank you, Chair. First, just a couple of, I hope, reassurances. The point here is to make sure that we gather input wherever and whenever, more, not less. Metro Legal encountered a situation where a field trial that would require installation on the right-of-way was going to be part of this pilot. That triggers the public hearing requirement. Now, you won't have other details at the time that are recited in the code, but the intent here, and we've had good discussions with other council members, that when the public hearing requirement was instituted, it was done in 2017 before license plate readers were a glimmer in this council's eye. And so when you take the two, it's not seamless. The two code provisions do not mesh perfectly well. Totally agree. I think we're doing the utmost to make sure at the first potential trigger, that is when there's an installation required for purposes of a field study, we'll have the public hearing. In discussions with council members who had expressed concerns about the timing, we have expressly stated, look, we agree, probably the better time to have the public hearing is after the pilot. Then you've got data, you've got experience, you've got outcomes. I don't know what exactly the public would be expected to comment on. There's nothing new under the sun since this council approved it in February. Our other problem is timing. If this is deferred, we can't complete the 6-month pilot while this body is still in office. And this body has done all of the work on LPRs. Now, what you might want to consider, what I would wholly endorse, is because those sections of the code with respect to public hearing and LPRs aren't perfectly meshed, you've got time to tweak that section of the code during the 6-month pilot. and spell that out to your satisfaction. In the meantime, we are wholly open to an additional public hearing at the end of the pilot when there's genuine information for the public to comment on. Right now, as we see it, at the first trigger, we're coming to you requesting the public hearing, and I believe we have individuals who will be here tomorrow to comment on it.
Councilmember Evans.
Thank you. So what I've gathered from this entire conversation is we're not clearly connecting the dots between what is in the original code, what's in the recitals of this resolution, and we're making a judgment call basically because it's not like you can draw the clear connection because we haven't had the pilot and we don't have information like costs and those kinds of details. So my question, because it's all been answered by this discussion, but my second question is really about the public hearing. So if the group were to defer it, I assume we would still have the public hearing tomorrow night, or would that be deferred as well as part of this process?
Director Darby.
I think that you could still have the public hearing tomorrow night. The legislation has been filed. It's pending before the council. Even if it you would take action, I believe, after the public hearing occurs anyway. So I think you should go ahead and have the public hearing.
Councilmember Mendez.
I'll keep it brief. First of all, respectfully, Mr. Jameson, license plate readers were definitely a glimmer in our eyes in 2017. That and the rest of the very broad definition of surveillance technology put in the law at that time. Secondly, people can gussy it up all they want. The code requires determination of certain things by the Metro Council before putting LPRs in the right of way. And this legislation, as drafted, doesn't have the determination made in it. So if folks want to have the public hearing tomorrow, that's fine. Anybody who wants to get this done during our term, I think I've been relatively accurate on predicting litigation results while I've been in office, and not to pass it tomorrow night without the determination required by the code. It's just a question of whether somebody feels like challenging that. But the determination required by the code from the council isn't in the legislation. Thanks.
Thank you. We are on the deferral motion. See no other hands. All in favor? Can I raise hands? We need to get this one down. Say 2 in favor of the deferral. All opposed? Hands, please. 2, 3, 8.
8, okay.
2 in favor, 8 against the deferral. We had 2. I'm going to check the numbers real quick. Can y'all do that one more time? All that were opposed. Two in favor, 7 against, and we had only not voting. 3 not voting. All right, we are back on the resolution. Any comments on the resolution? I think we've kind of taken this one as far as we can. So, all in favor? Any opposed? 10 in favor, 2 against.
Abstentions, I think maybe that's.
An abstention. 9 in favor, 2 against, and 1 abstention. All right. Moving on to item number 2. 2022-1827 Withers, Roten, and Hurt approves a term sheet describing the terms and conditions of the agreements and transactions required to finance, construct, and operate a new enclosed multipurpose stadium on the East Bank, subject to the subsequent approval of final agreements, and authorizing the Metropolitan government to pursue other matters related thereto. Council member, can I get a motion in a second? Moved, properly seconded. Councilmember Withers is in with us, and he is the lead sponsor on this. Councilmember Withers, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chair, for this. I know we do have a couple of amendments. My request to the committee, I know I'm not on committee, but is for a one meeting deferral to our next meeting that will allow time for the remaining public comments with the East Bank Stadium Committee. And then, of course, if there are any other amendments, we can entertain all of those at one time at the next meeting. That's my request to the committee.
Okay. So I have Councilmember Withers, who is not on the committee, is asking for a one-meeting deferral. Councilmember Hurt, you're also on the bill. Would you like to make a motion for the deferral, or are you?
Yes, I would like to make a motion to defer one meeting.
All right. We have a motion for a deferral, properly seconded. Councilmember Mendez on the deferral.
Thanks, Chair. As you know, the East Bank Stadium Committee is supposed to be a place to gather information, and the members are supposed to be saving, sort of debating the legislation for the regular committee process. And just I'm interested in your preference about, like, I understand there will be a push to try to pass it at December 20th meeting. So when is the appropriate time to get into like deeper questions that are not necessarily in the information gathering role of the other committee? Now, or on the 19th, or a special meeting? I don't know.
It was my hope that once this legislation got to us and it was actually going to take a vote, like I had been told that this would probably be a deferral today. I would like for the administration to come in Budget and Finance and answer any question that any council member has regarding this. Obviously, I counted yesterday, 21 East Bank meetings. The legislation is out there, and all the answers that everything we've gone through is out there on the website for all to see. Any council member who over the past 4 or 5 months has not had a chance to look at all that information, then I think they're being negligent in their duties. We have legislation coming up. I want Finance here to answer all the questions that any council member could have from all that information, and we'll take as long as we need to take on that Monday. And if they want a different day, we can come up with a different day. But we definitely want to take as much time as it takes for us to sit here and hash it all out before we vote. So,
all right, then I will save questions I've got for then.
Okay. Thank you, Councilmember.
And you're talking about the 19th, 2 weeks from today?
Correct.
All right, thanks.
Any other questions? Oh, Councilmember Allen.
Just following in the great example that the committee has done, would it be appropriate to try to submit as many questions as we can ahead of time to make sure that we've got all the answers available for us?
Councilmember Mendez.
I definitely encourage everybody to do that. I mean, being perfectly honest, the questions I would have today are things that I can't seem to get an answer to, and so they're not online. And so, but I'll save them for the 19th.
And would those go to Ms. Darby or to Ms. Gooden?
Ms. Godin gets all the questions for council members, and there's still, the office is submitting them to the administration once a week, I think on Fridays, and the administration is answering, I think, typically in just under a week. So they're being pretty responsive.
Thank you. We are on the deferral. All in favor? Any opposed? You adopt. 12 in favor, 0 against. We're on number 5, 2022-1886. I've already read this one. It is authorizes the Metropolitan Development and Housing Agency to enter into a pilot agreement and accept payments in lieu of ad valorem taxes with respect to a multifamily housing project located at 334, 336, 336A Ewing Drive, known as Ewing Heights. I know Council Member Van Rees needs to abstain on this. Councilmember Toombs, do you have anything to say on this? Seeing nothing, we need a motion. Motion properly seconded. All in favor? Any opposed? 11 in favor, 0 against, 1 abstention. Twenty 1889 approves a grant contract between the Metropolitan Board of Health and Mental Health Cooperative to provide outreach, assessment, and linkage to care for individuals identified by the Nashville Fire Department EMS as part of the High Impact Area Opioid Overdose Response Program. This is the one where Councilmember Hurt needed to abstain from this. So can I get a motion? Moved, properly seconded. Seeing no hands, all in favor? Any opposed? 11 in favor, 0 against, 1 abstention. Moving on to bills on second reading. 2022-1529, Withers, Roten, and Hurt amends Chapter 5.12 of the Metropolitan Code by increasing the hotel occupancy privilege tax in the amount of 1% and directing the proceeds be used for the construction of and future capital improvements to a new enclosed stadium and debt services related thereto. We have an amendment. Can I get a motion? Motion properly seconded. We have a motion for the amendment. Properly seconded. On the amendment, Councilmember Withers, you're here with us. Could you explain the amendment? Oh, I'm being told that we moved it last meeting, so I'm being told we don't have to move that amendment again, so it's already been approved, so we are on the bill. So anyone on the bill? It's been moved and properly seconded. Councilmember Mendez.
I just want to make sure this is amendable on third. Council Director.
Director Darby.
Yes, it's a tax ordinance, so it would be amendable on third.
All right, thanks. And then I'm going to vote no. I think that acting to, I understand from the administration that there are ongoing negotiations with the team on multiple issues that will find their way into the definitive documents a couple months down the road from now. And to me, the idea of having the metropolitan government turn on what appears to be the single biggest or second biggest revenue source in middle of the negotiation makes no sense to me. We can just as easily turn that on if and when we approve the definitive documents rather than now. So I'll be a no for that reason.
Councilmember Allen.
I would move to, oh, never mind. I think we've already got the amendment and it delayed the effective date. So that was the thing we wanted to do.
Councilmember Johnston.
Just for the viewing audience, want to make sure that everyone knows that this increased tax only goes into effect once we approve the new building. It cannot be used for anything else. It cannot be actually turned on until those, it's my understanding, those definitive documents have been approved and we're 100% moving forward. We also have a third reading on this still. This is not the final vote on this. I do believe it can be amended on third. We've got the term sheet that was just deferred, and I assume it will be deferred on the council floor as well, so that the third reading of this and the term sheet will be tracking specifically together, which I think is important. And so I would move approval. It doesn't do any good to vote no or to defer it. In my opinion, it's time to move on.
We are on the bill. See no hands. All in favor? Any opposed? 1 no. 2 no's. 10 in favor, 2 against.
I was wondering if anyone was abstaining.
Item number 12, 2022-1533, Rosenberg, Roten, Withers, and Pulley approves an easement for property located at 7034 Charlotte Pike, owned by Lowe's Home Center. I know we have an amendment on this. I don't see Councilmember Rosenberg with us tonight, but move, properly seconded. And the amendment's been moved and properly seconded. Director Darby, would you like to explain the amendment so everybody understands what we're doing?
The amendment changes the effective date so that the director of MHID will make a determination that all the occupants at Charlotte Pike have been provided with permanent or semi-permanent housing in accordance with the coordinated entry process.
If I may, I usually don't get into this, but I was listening to planning, and I know there was a question about if we have a couple people that don't want to leave, is the term providing housing, does that mean they have been provided housing even if they don't leave? Or I guess that was kind of the question that came up in planning. It was a little kind of.
I think that the term provided with could be interpreted as providing the opportunity for the permanent or semi-permanent housing.
Okay. Anybody else with any questions? Councilmember Pulley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Starr, you say it could be interpreted that way, so we don't have a definitive way to interpret that word provided?
Well, it says provided with permanent or semi-permanent housing, and I think it could be interpreted that way, as providing the opportunity for semi-permanent housing.
Okay, and another question from the administration is, has this not already been done?
Sorry, Mike, there you go.
Thank you, Councilman. Thank you, Chair. MHIT is already actively engaging on the site for providing housing providers for the occupants. Did have a good discussion with Councilman Rosenberg today and noted the problem with provided. That just means my instruction in law school was that if the ordinance doesn't define it, you just look at Webster's definition, which says provided means to supply or make available. So you could just say, here's housing, don't care if you take it or not. And I don't know that that's what he wanted. And the other problem for us is that the eventual easement and fencing is designed not to restrict or constrain the occupants, but once they have been rehoused, to secure the facility, lest another encampment come in. So we asked if he would be amenable to having a date certain. Which occupants are we talking about? Those as of December 6th. He was agreeable to that. We also thought it important to make reference to multiple housing options, not just one, and to reference specifically the continuum of care encampment program so that we have specific terms and definitions that the committees have fashioned for us. So crafted that late filed amendment for him, sent it to him about 3 hours ago after circling with all the experts and texted him, but just have not yet heard back. So I say all that just to say don't be surprised by a late filed amendment by Councilman Rosenberg that we will be supportive of, but we do see the problems with the current amendment.
Thank you for that. So to be clear, you are in the process of doing just exactly that, making sure everybody has the opportunity. And are we yet clear on whether or not those who refuse that would complicate this particular bill if this amendment passes?
Right, or not even someone who refuses. Let's say, perfect scenario, everyone is housed to their satisfaction, relocated, and the land is clean, and then somebody shows up and doesn't want to leave.
Okay.
So just to address those concerns, again, a good discussion with Councilman Rosenberg. We've got the draft late file amendment. We're just waiting for him to approve it before we circulate it.
Thank you, Mr. Jameson.
Councilmember Mendez.
I want to applaud everybody on their careful attention to the nuanced meaning of words and the specificity, and hope that when we get to the LPR bill tomorrow, we can have the same diligence about requiring a determination to be made by the council.
I don't see anybody else wanting to be smartasses tonight, so, no. So, we're on the amendment. All in favor? Opposed? 11 in favor, 1 against. We are now on 1533 as amended. All in favor? Any opposed? You adopt. 12 in favor, 0 against. 2022-1571 amends Title 8 of the Metropolitan Code relative to animals. There's a letter to defer from Councilmember Stiles. If I could get a motion. Motion properly seconded. Can I get a motion for deferral? Motion to defer. Oh, sorry. On the bill, she has raised her hand, Councilmember Allen.
And the question was, how long? Is it a one meeting deferral or longer?
Let me get to the letter here. First meeting in January. Anybody have a problem?
Move to defer to the first meeting in January.
Thank you, Councilmember Allen, for catching that. My apologies. So all in favor? Any opposed? 12 in favor, 0 against. And we have one more bill on the agenda. Councilmember Sledge has sent in a letter to approve 2022-1573 approves an agreement between the Metropolitan Government and Market Street Management, LLC, concerning the construction of public infrastructure improvements on the Fairgrounds campus. We have a letter of approval from Councilmember Sledge. Can I get a motion? Moved, properly seconded. Any questions? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? You approve, 12 in favor, 0 against. We are adjourned.
Right.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information on this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.